Well, it looks like we are live again on Facebook. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching us live, welcome. I am Carolina Quesada with the Nonprofit Partnership, and I'm welcoming you to another interview in our series called Our Stories, Our Times. And in this series, we are interviewing local nonprofit leaders, and we're doing this to really capture their story and understand how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting their work, is impacting their communities, their constituencies, their teams, their organization. And let me just say that, we fully understand that keeping connected to one another is critically important during these times. And especially as nonprofit professionals, there's a lot of work to do out there. And I think the more that we're aware of our own stories of impact and the similarity in what we're experiencing, the more united we'll be through all of this experience that we're all living through. Now, before I introduce our guest today, let me just say that if you are watching us live, I encourage you to leave a question or a comment or stop by and say hello. Our guest speaker loves highs, so please stop by and leave a little comment. And without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today, Zach Benjamin, who is the Executive Director of Jewish Long Beach. Welcome, Zach. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Carolina. It's good to see you, and thanks so much for the opportunity here.
Yeah, thrilled that you can join us today. So, Zach, let's start off with talking a little bit more about Jewish Long Beach, what your organization does, anything that you'd like to share to give folks more context.
Sure. So in a nutshell, we're a multifaceted organization. We belong to a network called the Jewish Federations of North America, but we're very much an independent 501c3, and then they're kind of a national association of like-minded organizations. And we essentially serve the Jewish community of our local catchment area, and then a little bit overseas as well. But really, our charge is to make sure that Jewish life has a safe and sustainable and rich environment in which to thrive in the Long Beach and West Orange County areas. So for us, that means strategic grant making first and foremost. We're actually a funder. We operate very much as a foundation. We also have leadership development programs, partnerships, programming, really to provide engagement opportunities and serve as a resource for primarily the Jewish community, but I think also really highlighting those areas where the Jewish community serves the broader community. We really do value a tradition of service and what we call tzedakah, which is essentially good charitable works and contributions. So that is who we are in a nutshell, and kind of we're at an interesting juncture. About a year ago, the Jewish Federation of Greater Long Beach and West Orange County and the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Long Beach and West Orange County merged to create Jewish Long Beach. And so it was really a merging of two different but complementary missions, two different types of organizations. And then at that time is when I came in as CEO, and here we are.
Yes, here we are. And that's been, did you say about a year ago now?
Yeah, not quite a year, back last June.
And so, I think that it's good to remind folks out there who are watching or who will be watching a little later on how, the merger of these two organizations is really, I think, to your point earlier, meant to really serve, I think, in a much more holistic, comprehensive way, right?
Absolutely. And I think that was the thinking of our lay leadership, and certainly my predecessor, Deborah Goldfarb, who stewarded this process of merging to its conclusion and then retired, really was that our role as an enabler and a funder of programs that serve our mission is becoming more and more important. And the agency that essentially makes envisions the community priorities and assesses, what our community needs to thrive, should not be really, there shouldn't be a firewall between us and the funding entity. So I think from an operational standpoint and a philosophical standpoint, that made a lot of sense. And then I think all of us in the nonprofit world are also kind of looking 10, 20 plus years down the line and asking some hard questions about the future of annual giving, and to what extent can we continue to rely on human nature and behavior, which changes with the environment as we're seeing right now, for better or worse. And so I think also operating more as a foundation is a way to ensure that we're able to serve into the future.
Absolutely. And thank you for that a bit of background there on how, what was really the driver behind having these two organizations that, quite frankly, have been real anchor institutions in Long Beach as well for a long time, come together. But kind of taking a look at, Zach, what's happening right now, and with the pandemic and the changes that organizations are having to acclimate to. Give us a picture of what's been going on in Jewish Long Beach.
Sure. It's a good question. And, we're coming off this merger, and we're still very much kind of emerging from that process. Not only were we merging philosophically, but also operationally. From the staff side, the foundation and federation did share staff resources, but also from the lay side, the boards converged. Essentially, a new board was created, a new committee structure, new financial management structure and systems. And then we come right out of that, and we're pivoting to a true grant-based funding model, whereas in the past we had provided funding to a predetermined set laundry list of local and international organizations. Now we're pivoting to this new model of our organization kind of setting a list of priorities for the community, and then entertaining grant proposals for programs that serve those priorities. Well, suddenly COVID-19 hits, and we suddenly have to think about becoming an all remote organization. We were not really equipped to operate remotely. The committees were just really in the midst of their first year of operating and getting to know each other and figuring out, how they are going to serve their functions. And suddenly we find ourselves in this position as kind of at least a Jewish community convener whose activities impact the broader community. And there was very much this feeling that all eyes were on us to see how we're going to respond and how we're going to react to this sudden new reality. So I think we had to take it in small bites to the extent possible, which wasn't always easy to do. Operationally, we had to figure out, okay, what are we gonna, how are we gonna fulfill our responsibilities to the community uninterrupted, while making the transition to having to be remote, because we don't serve clients on site like some social services agencies do, and we don't have direct delivery of certain services. We weren't there. We both had to go remote and also stay. Anyway, we couldn't operate out of an office anymore. So there's very much these nuts and bolts that you're thinking of, and meanwhile, the clock is ticking to come up with a structure for serving the community. So we very quickly convened our executive committee. There was a concept that really came from both the lay and professional side of, who are we, and how can we make the broadest impact and impact the most vulnerable members of our community as quickly as possible. Well, again, we're really a funder and a leadership development organization and an advocacy organization. So we decided that we would best serve by funding those organizations that were delivering services on the ground. and doing so as quickly and nimbly as possible, and with the least possible, funding dogma. We all kind of know how it is to apply for grants, and there's obviously a lot of accountability, and those are good things under normal circumstances. But in this case, we had to be very nimble. And so as the staff was preparing to become a remote operation, the lay leadership and myself and some of our senior staff were putting together a model to develop a COVID-19 relief fund from which we would make grants that served imminent and demonstrable community need to the most vulnerable.
And, when you and I we had a chance to connect about a week or so ago, and I was so enthralled by the story of internal coordination the Jewish Long Beach went through to respond quickly to the need. And at the time I said, Zach, I think this is a story that should get out a little bit more, because boy, you had to just your grant making process internally, which is something that I think maybe quite a few folks who are watching the video may not be aware, but Jewish Long Beach has been providing a good substantial amount of investment in our local community because of this situation. Do you mind sharing with us how much has already been granted out, and what are the types of projects that you've been supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a great point about the kind of collaboration that was necessary certainly between our lay leadership and our professionals. So we created what we're calling the Jewish Long Beach COVID-19 Relief Fund. We seeded it with $50,000 from our own grant pool, and then we put that up as a match to the community to raise additional funds. And so very quickly we started receiving informal applications, and we did make sure that this was going to be an informal application process. We convened the presidents and executives of the kind of Jewishly rooted nonprofits throughout Long Beach and West Orange County. We explained that the fund had been created, how much would be initially available, that we were raising funds through as a match throughout the community, and then also that if the fund got low, and depending on what the volume of requests was, that the possibility would exist that we'd be able to provide more of our funding from our own grant pool. So at the moment, we've raised just about $28,000 in addition to that initial $50,000 outlay, and we've granted out just over $50,000. And those are programs that range from the purchase of gift cards for food, supplies, medication, and basic needs for seniors, for families that are struggling financially, a little bit of rent and utility assistance, distance learning tools for the various educational institutions in our purview. We've funded counseling services for vulnerable members of the community across the age spectrum, from seniors to families that are coping to high school and college students. And we funded through one of the congregations in Los Alamitos the purchase of about 70 Passover meals for senior citizens. So, really what we're looking to do is to fund initiatives that are directly impacting individuals. We funded gift cards for basic supplies for those who had lost their jobs or been laid off. And this is evolving too. Yes. And we do have a committee, a planning and grants committee, that ultimately oversees this process. And they created a streamlined system where a subset of that committee, plus myself and our community engagement director, receive email descriptions of programs, very simple. They include very simple budget, and we have some simple steps for just kind of tracking how the funds are spent, and we're able to turn around grant requests in about 48 hours. So it's been really, in certain ways, one of the most gratifying experiences of my professional life as a nonprofit professional. And, for lack of a better term, it's really been an opportunity for us as an organization to demonstrate now in our new structure how we can be effective for the community, and how and why there is a case for donors and fund holders to support us.
And thanks for sharing all of that with us, because I think that many of us will be eager to see as well, how Jewish Long Beach, as a result of the situation and the funds that you're making available in the community, what's also coming back to you as far as some of the data around basic needs, and I think organizational response to these needs as well. Zach, is there any hope that maybe you might be releasing a phase 2 of some grant making? I mean, is that kind of on the horizon?
It is. It's something that our planning and grants committee is looking into. We're getting to the point where we're probably close to convening and looking to see if we'll need to make another infusion of funds, and it kind of depends on the inflow of contributions to the fund, as well as the continued volume of requests. Something that we are thinking seriously about is, how we can kind of expand this more to the broader community, because we are an organization that's rooted in a Jewish value system and serving Jewish community in our area. I think our priority was initially to make sure that need within the Jewish community, which was considerable, especially given the fact that it tends to be an aging demographic, was met. And now that we feel like we're well on our way to having a system for doing that, we want to kind of make this program available to the broader community as well. So, we're absolutely looking for kind of information from other organizations on where they may, need some funds for similar types of programs. And the grant amounts have been somewhere on in the $3,000 to $5,000 range, is kind of where it seems the sweet spot has been, with kind of some outliers, in both directions. So, I do hope that those who are listening in will get in touch with us and give us a sense of what they're doing and where we may be able to partner.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I know that we will be putting up your website in the comment box on Facebook Live, but we'll also make sure to make note of it before we adjourn today. And I think, one of the things we've been learning quite a bit from other leaders like you is really the sense of, collaboration, and really kind of trying to look at service in ways that maybe the organization hasn't been doing previously. But I think, what you're sharing with us today really highlights that you're willing to be very nimble and really looking at where the need really is, and kind of thinking through, well, how do we need to respond? Perhaps in more untraditional ways than the organization has experienced. And Zach, I just am curious to know from you, because, right now, different communities and cities are really talking about, how do we come back? How do we reopen our communities again? Any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see?
That's a great question. And it's something that we've also been thinking about quite a bit. In addition to our grant making and some of our other programs, we also happen to own and share operational responsibilities for the Weinberg Jewish Long Beach campus, which is well known for housing the Alpert Jewish Community Center and a number of other Jewishly focused nonprofit organizations. So we're thinking quite literally about how does the campus start to open up, and the JCC is a separate and independent organization, but because we do have this close collaborative relationship, I'm in contact daily almost with their leadership and senior management about what is a phasing in going to look like. And I think philosophically more broadly than just the nuts and bolts of the sterilizing and the retrofitting of public customer service, member services desks with plexiglass and that sort of thing is, I think it's going to be important for us to probably in our sector be leaders in demonstrating how to safely kind of reemerge in ways that respects the obviously need to be very cautious, but also demonstrates that we can't pay short shrift to the boost in morale and general mental health that will come with seeing human faces again, not on a computer screen, and engaging in to the extent that we can in some of those activities that build community and that feed our souls as human beings. So I think we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I think we're all getting to the point where there's some understanding that we're going to have to step out of the shadows. And I think that those of us in our sector may have to be some of the first to figure out how to do it and what it's going to look like. And I think there's somewhat of a pioneer spirit there that we're going to have. And once we take the lead, I think we'll see society start to blossom into a new and cautious normal. And I think hopefully is going to be fulfilling for all of us.
Yeah. And that's, based on what you said, and for so many other reasons, that's why nonprofits should really be at that conversational table when,
Right.
Regional decisions or citywide or neighborhood-wide decisions are being made about what this looks like. Zach, I know we're running a little low on our interview time today, but I wanted to go back to something you shared a little earlier. And, you are a new executive director in this community of Long Beach. And I'm just curious to know if, you have any insights that you want to share about what it's been like to, kind of take the helm of Jewish Long Beach. And, you did it obviously right after a big merger for the organization, and then the pandemic hits.
Right.
And then, you're having to really respond in very flexible and adaptive ways. So give us some insight into what it's like to be in your shoes.
Well, it hasn't been boring, number one. And, it's funny. Some people, I've had a board member or two come to me almost apologetically and say, this isn't how we drew it up. And we knew it was going to be challenging, but, I can't believe what you had to face in your first year. And to me, it's been a growth experience and, frankly, a skill building experience. This is my second executive director role. Prior to coming to Jewish Long Beach, I'd been the executive director of the Jewish Federation of New Mexico for 4 years. So my family and I, my wife and daughter and I moved out here to Long Beach, and it's in a certain respect, it's been affirming in certain ways that, the calling that I felt. This is also actually a second career for me. I spent 10 years in large trade associations doing business development, mostly overseas, and kind of had this sense that I was close to where I wanted to be in what I wanted to do when I grew up, but not quite there. And for a number of reasons, I felt a calling to Jewish communal work. And in some regard, it's been affirming that this was, the space within our sector where I can indeed, in fact, make the impact that I would hope to make, and facilitate was probably a better word, the impact that I'd hope to facilitate. And, on the other hand, it's been an exercise in, managing being human versus being fulfilling a professional role. And as an executive director, you're always, I think, kind of balancing those identities. But as we've had to shift from, already a fairly frenetic juncture in our organization's history with the merger and shifting our funding model, suddenly to providing real relief and response in a pandemic, I think all of that comes to a head, and those identities definitely begin to brush up against each other. And it's been a great exercise in, juggling kind of those two aspects of our work. And sometimes they are not mutually exclusive. And then, finally, I'll say this: I feel tremendously lucky to be with this particular organization, working with the professional team that I've got, and the lay leadership and board that I have. I've worked in nonprofits in some capacity for almost 20 years, and I don't know that I've ever seen the kind of responsiveness and decisiveness and collaboration and setting aside of agenda and ego across the board for those of us in the professional side and on the lay side, to achieve a goal and to do it expeditiously. And I have to say, it's been, for all of the challenge, this entire year and the entire experience and the transition, and I'd say especially the COVID-19 response process, has probably been the most fulfilling experience of my professional life. And so I'm really just grateful to have had this experience at this time in this community.
Well, thank you for rising to the occasion, and much, much more than that. So it's always a unique place to be as an executive director, and much so, during these times as well. So Zach, to round off the interview, share with us what you do for self-care.
Well, it's tough sometimes. I've actually had to become far more in tune and more mindful of the need for self-care in the last couple of months. And I've learned to do a lot of deep breathing, and that even means just standing up, stepping back, taking deep breaths. I've learned to understand that taking care of myself, and especially on the mental health side, is part of serving the community and the organization. And I think something that I think it's important for other executives and leaders to know is that I hope that those that we're serving and the organizations that we've been partnering with, have felt it's a smooth and positive experience working with us. But personally, on a personal level, as executive director, there's always questioning, and in those first days of the crisis, when there was uncertainty and we didn't know what the response was going to look like, and there was certainly pressure to make sure that we did respond and that we did provide in the way that in the right ways for the community. There was tremendous anxiety and tremendous questioning, and that's okay. I think the number one thing that I have been able to do for self-care, that I hope others are able to do, is just give yourself permission to get frustrated. Give yourself permission to, experience high anxiety, and know that if you weren't good at what you were doing, if you didn't care, you wouldn't be having those feelings, perhaps. And so it's just part of your fulfilling your responsibilities to yourself, to your organization, to your community. And it's okay. And it's also okay to step away and take deep breaths and spend time with family, and leave that email for an hour, or even tomorrow, or later in the week, if you don't feel emotionally equipped to handle it at this minute. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be far more effective if you are in a mentally healthy place, and if you're caring for yourself, than you will if you are neglecting yourself.
Well, thank you so much for that sage advice and for all of the insights that you've shared on this interview today. We're so appreciative that you said yes to Long Beach a little over a year ago.
You know, it goes both ways. I'm grateful that Long Beach said yes to me as well.
Thank you again, Zach. We're very, very appreciative of your time. And again, for those of you who want to know more about Jewish Long Beach, the programs of the organization, the mission and their work, can you give us that website, Zach?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's jewishlongbeach.org. And something that we didn't touch on that I'll just quickly address is on that website, there's information on the Jewish Long Beach COVID-19 Response Fund. We've also set up a COVID-19 resource center that has resources from the medical community, local and state government, from the Jewish community, from the Operate JCC and other organizations to help people of all ages and stages in life cope. And so we do encourage everyone to come and take a look and spend some time there.
Excellent. Well, we are going to go ahead and sign off with that. Zach, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolina. It's been a pleasure.
Bye, everybody.